So if I'm not online long with this, you'll know why. And if that's the case, then I will go ahead and upload a video later. Lord of mercy, the last week talking about these guys has just been, and some of their hot takes in Evangelical has just been crazy. Welcome. I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer, and it is Taco Tuesday, Totalist Authoritarian Christian Organizations, which is easier than saying CULT, but less problematic than that, and easier than saying non-denominational, high-demand Christian organizations. So we call it Taco Tuesday. And it is the bikini verklimping season. If you know who I am, I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write for a column called No Longer Quivering for Pathos about evangelical towns. So that's why I talk about these things. I also attended an evangelical church. I think I figured out one time it was like 17 or 18 years. I've been out about that long too. So that's a whole long length of time to be thinking about these things and thinking about what it was actually Jesus said and did. These are just my opinions. Don't bully anybody. Don't even be rude in the comments. We're better than that. Okay, so first I have to start with just a little bit of shade I got to throw at somebody completely unrelated. I was watching Normal Bird Lady's videos today because who doesn't love Normal Bird Lady? She is awesome. And I love her little bird Fig, but I'm a bird fanatic. And she made some really good points. The Valley Girl voice. And here's the thing. Becky is totally wrong by what she's saying about all of us. And I consider myself kind of nominally cater now, just nominally off to the side, not saying and doing much, not even watching much. But I just have to say she's all wrong. Normal Bird Lady is pretty awesome too. So that's my shout out of the day. The last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks has been bikini verklimping season. Every year, fundamentalists crawl out of the woodworks and evangelicals crawl out of the woodworks and start telling women what to do with their bodies. And it's always silly. Most of the time it's about bikini. But I have such a problem with that word today. Too much lyric, I guess. Yeah, they bump my dose up again. So if I'm stuff about women's bodies and bikinis, it's always defrauding men, okay? The same men that Jesus said, if you're defrauded and you're having lust, poke your, and it just gets dumber and dumber every year. Woman wears none. Number one. And number two, Jesus poking the eye. Of course, he's not the type to ever say anything about anything anyone's wearing here, because we live in a place where people wear very little clothing. So here it's kind of a foregone conclusion. Your clothing, your spirituality in any way, shape, or form. Except in the US, where Christian men are so weak and wimpy they can't stand the sight of a rear end covered with spandex. So last week I talked about that. I talked about how it's dehumanizing to women to talk about that, and even to think that, and to poke your eyeballs out if you're going that direction with it and you're a man. And I didn't get much pushback, and that's fine, because they know which direction I'm going to take on just about anything now, because I'm all about. But there were a couple of things that came up on my radar this week in the middle of bikini verklimping season that just made me laugh. One of them was Prophetess Amanda Grace at the Trump Doral warned of technologically advanced mermaids and water people spreading perversion, and told the crowd, we are meant for hand-to-hand comment. What? And here's where that gets funny. That's mixed up all in with the Christian nationalism movement, because this was shared by Patriot Takes. they're all involved with Christian nationalism, which Christian nationalism is not even a thing in the Bible at all. It doesn't talk about what nation you are, how you identify, any of that. If you notice that the tribalness in the Bible is not, well, after Jesus, the tribalism was just swept away. Jesus himself talked about that. So whenever I see Chris Bible low, I'm like, oh, no, not really. But here's what made me laugh. Somebody I follow on Twitter today said this quote I have on my little screen cap I have at the beginning. So I took a screen cap of this woman and I posted the guy's quote where he talked about what happens when you mix up your sermon notes with your Aquaman fan fiction. Just busted out laughing because what they're saying, it sure sounds like some kind of weird Aquaman fan fiction. Mermaids. Has anybody ever seen a mermaid? Hell, I'd like to be a mermaid. If I had to pick what I wanted to grow up and be, it would be a mermaid. But since I live in reality land and mermaids aren't a real thing, I have to kind of not do that. My favorite kitchen towel is one that says, "Still mad that I'm not a mermaid." And that kind of sums it up for me. So I'm getting a big kick out of some of the things they're coming up with. The yoga pants being evil because they're making men lust. This claim that mermaids and mermen are creating perversion throughout the US and the world is just another amusing one because there's no hint of that at all. And for that to be at a major rally sort of thing just kind of blows my mind. Isn't anybody like vetting some of these people that are going through Christian nationalism? I don't know. And the other one that blew my mind this week that we have to talk about the most is the one where most of these guys started comparing leaving church. And we have to talk about Mother's Day. That's the big one. Started talking about leaving church versus McDonald's or Starbucks screwing up your order. They said, well, you'll go back and forth to Starbucks or McDonald's 20, 30, 40, 50 times, but you leave a church the first time you run up against something you don't like. No. I'm going to talk about why that analogy is one of the worst ones I've seen in a long time. I don't know about you guys. I don't go to a Starbucks at all living here, except if I'm in San Jose. And I go to McDonald's in Liberia, not very many times at all. So for me, this analogy didn't work at all. But when I lived in the United States and Starbucks or McDonald's or whoever screwed up my order, it's not going to stop me from getting coffee drinks at Starbucks or whatever. And it's a minor thing. It's a minor part of your day. It's a minor irritation. So somebody put 2 instead of 3 shots of espresso in your pumpkin spice latte. It's a minor irritation. But for you to be going to a church and you hear somebody get up and talk about mermaids and you know that's not right, and you get up and leave, that's a whole different thing. That is not a minor thing. That is a very serious thing that they're doing. They're adding stuff to the Word of God that doesn't even exist, or they're taking a piece of scripture and they are doing the twister with it. They're playing the twister game and twist it all up to mean things that it could not possibly even mean. Most people that leave church because they've been personally hurt, because the theology harms them inside, harms their self-perception of who they are, or they are told something like people I know with depression were told that it was a demon, told that they had to pray it away, that they weren't good enough Christians, that if they were good enough Christians, they would not have doubts, they would not have any kind of depression. It would just be smooth sailing, lollipops and white clouds if you just prayed the right way, believed in Jesus the right way, took your focus off yourself the right way, then your depression would flee. And if it didn't flee, you were doing it wrong. To me, that is the most harmful lie that is promoted in a lot of these taco churches, is the lie about depression. That is the one that harms people. There are people who have committed suicide over that nonsense and took it in seriously. I've talked before about our own personal fighting with the church over that, them telling that to various family members. We've talked about that repeatedly. A lot of times when people leave, it's not even the first time that this has happened. It may not even be the 20th time, like they're trying to say in all these stupid memes about, well, if McDonald's screwed you order 20 times and you go back, why would you be offended the first time at church? Dude, it's not the first time. It may be the 20th time or the 200th time. What it is when within yourself you can no longer balance what you know and believe with what you're hearing. It's that disconnect that sometimes causes some pretty serious harm in people, pushing them to things like suicide, self-preservation in most of us, that eventually we start having cognitive problems. We just leave. We just like, no, nope, I can't do this anymore. I will sit at home before I'll do that. And so to say that the one time the church does something and you get offended and leave is disingenuous, and that's not true. That's not true at all. So if you're the pastor of a church and you're losing a lot of people, you need to look at what it is you're doing. In fact, you should be running exit interviews. I told my old pastor that at the time. I said, you really need to come up with exit interviews to figure out why people are ditching this place. And I said, I will tell you right now while I'm ditching it. And I didn't even do it because I was offended. I did it because one of the things in the scriptures, it does talk about the husband being the head of the spiritual family, the spiritual head of the family. And I was really convicted of that and bashed for that. I started being just having the absolute crap kicked out of me every day on the streets of my little Virginia town when I would run into people that I knew and I knew well, and they knew me pretty well. And they started just bashing the hell out of me for that, for following that. And that turned me more against these taco type churches than anything else. 2 years this went on, 2 years in which I cried every single day. So if you're going through that, my heart goes out to you. I've been there, done that, gotten the tattoo. I'm not going to say t-shirt. I'm going to say tattoo, even though I have no tattoos. And say, that's understandable. These people in these taco clue. They have no clue. They think if they're ugly enough to you that you'll come back to church. If they throw enough rocks at you, you'll come back to church. But you don't, you won't. Which leads me to the other thing I need to talk about today, which is Mother's Day. I was pretty quiet leading up to Mother's Day. I talked a little bit on Twitter about it, but not many other places. You know what I did on Mother's Day? I went to the beach. I didn't go anywhere near a church. I went to the beach. It wasn't a perfect day for me, but it was an okay day. I went to the beach. It was cram-packed with people, but I got to watch some very expert surfers, and that fills my soul. I mean, people who were going out to the fourth or fifth set of breakers to surf in, and were doing it expertly. They were dancing with the water, and it was great. So I was able to ignore all the people who were letting their dogs dig up turtle eggs and stupidity like that that's banned there, and the wall-to-wall people. So there was that. Went out to eat. A restaurant that I absolutely love that has new owners that told me the lie. I wouldn't change anything, but they changed the grade of meat they were serving, and I picked up on it right away. I was like, "Ooh, this is not good." So it wasn't the best of days, but it certainly wasn't the worst. Many years ago, back during my time in my old quiverful church, I stopped going on Mother's Day. And I told the pastor why I stopped attending on Mother's Day and how that would continue. Well, at the old church, Mother's Day was, oh, motherhood, blah, 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 is so wonderful. All mothers are so perfect and blessed and blah, 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 blah. Go tell your mother today, blah, blah, blah. And it was always these very up presentations, no mention made of the fact that many people struggle with their mothers. Not everybody has super close relationships. Many people struggle with motherhood. There have been times when I've struggled with it. I'm not the perfect mother. I've tried, but man, I failed like everybody else. And that's kind of the nature of who we are as people. It happens. There are going to be those days where you're just exhausted and burned out from it, where you're going to be a little bit less than what you normally are. And that's fine. It's fine all along the board. It's fine not to have a great relationship with your mother or some of your children, even. You just can do what you can do, and that's all it is. So I quit going. Most of you that know me here know I've struggled with my mother. I'm struggling with her super hard right now because she needs to be in a retirement home, nursing home, because she's not capable of taking care of herself. My answer after me to do something, there's not a lot I can do. There just isn't. And they're not getting that. They think I should be able to just fly there and force her into a nursing home. Well, we have had that conversation now probably 5 or 6 times, and it never goes well. She always tells me she will leave her house if they drag her out dead. And I'm kind of like, okay, okay. I don't want to harm you in any way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to let you do the things you want to do up until the time where you do something massively unhinged. And then at that point, we can get you to go into a home. But until that point, there's not a lot we can do. And it doesn't matter how many hysterical phone calls I get from my aunts. It's not going to change any of that. So I've had this major moment of stepping back. So in the middle of this, Mother's Day happens. And while I didn't go to church this Sunday, and I still don't know what the sermon was, I haven't asked my husband, but I'm sure it was Mother's Day, and it was the perfection of mothers and the ideal looking up and all that. I sit there grinding my teeth hearing that crap, thinking about some of the things that have happened from earliest childhood with me with my own mother, and some things that have happened, and some relationships I've had, the spiritual mothers who have been mother-like to me, and those people in my life who I've been able to mother myself. So the label mother is such a broad thing in my eyes, and to hear it narrowed down to this tiny one description of what motherhood is not good. I'm just choke on that because motherhood it's a multifaceted thing for bad and for good. And I think the church mishandles this. So I've been arguing online on Twitter with a bunch of these motherhood must always be spoken about in church, blah, 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 in a positive way. Well, no. Mother's Day is a Hallmark holiday. It is not a Christian holiday. So whether a church chooses to or not to have Mother's Day is strictly on them. But I can tell you, you do that. Oh, thank you. Thank you, MC. I try to. I don't always manage it, but I try. Sometimes I'm imperfect about it. But Mother's Day is really hard for me because of my relationship with my mother. It always is. It always has been. So not being forced to do that is the biggest freedom. Back when I was going to my old church and they were doing this goopy, over sentimental, mushy Mother's Day, I just started open out and going to the beach on those days. We used to call those days, my husband and I, the $50 hot dog days. We would do the 2.5, 3 3-hour drive to Virginia Beach from our house. And one of our traditions when we go to Dairy Queen, we each have a foot-long hot dog, chips, drinks, and then ice cream. And it would run $50 for 4 of us, pretty much. So we would joke about the $50 hot dog day. And that was my way of coping. That's still my way of coping. I'm glad that I was able to do it, even though wall-to-wall people. And I don't like that on my favorite beach. I like to go on days like today, where if I went there right now, probably 5 or 6 people on that beach instead of several hundred. Oh, so there you go. So that's why I think Mother's Day needs to be handled a lot more sensitively in the church. Some churches do it well. Some churches do it goopy, sentimental stuff that just makes me gag every time. So it really depends upon the church. But that's another thing that I lay at the feet of the taco people. Can, if you have people that are so harmed by what you're doing that they can't attend on certain days, you need to think about what it is you're doing and believing in. Okay, you guys, I am going to go ahead and go. It's only been 21 minutes. I know, but hey, I got stuff to do, people to see, men to offend with my leggings. Love all of you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.